Why are Fujifilm cameras always sold out, and why do people even buy them? This is a question I've been asking myself for a while, and I'm here in Albania on a short trip trying to find answers to it with the Fujifilm X100V. As a Canon shooter right from the start, I know that my Canon cameras are from the highest performing cameras on the market. For those of you who don't know, I've got an R6 Mark II which I use as my main camera, and paired with my RF 24-70mm f2.8 as well as the RF 70-200mm f2.8 lens, that thing delivers outstandingly good results and has me covered both in photo and video department for all kinds of client work that I do. It's also perfect, if not an overkill, for this YouTube channel. So naturally, around last year when I noticed that Fujifilm cameras were always sold out, I wondered why everyone was buying them. I didn't really try to understand it at the time, especially the X100V hype, probably because I'm a little bit rebellious, meaning that when I see everyone do something, I want to do the exact opposite. So now that everyone is talking about this camera's successor, the X106, I was open to see what the X100V had to offer. The X100V was released in 2020, and admittedly it's such a nice looking camera. Especially with this grey aluminium at the top and at the bottom, it really looks like a classic film camera. The mechanical dials also contribute to the overall classic and artsy vibe of this camera. After spending about 1 week with this camera, I have to admit that it's pretty hard to give it back now. And here's 5 reasons why. The first reason is the film simulations, and I think that's the main reason why people buy Fujifilm cameras. Honestly, I have no idea why the other camera brands don't implement this brilliant feature into their systems as well. What film simulations do is basically work as an in-camera preset for your images. The camera lets you control various settings like grain, color, clarity, sharpness, the tone curve, color chrome effect, etc. Save them as a film simulation and have all the pictures you take have those settings applied to them. These settings are also overlaid on the screen and the electronic viewfinder before you take a picture, so that you can exactly know what it will look like. I found an app called Fuji X Weekly, which posts these combinations of these effects that are in camera for you to create different looks for your images. These are called, I think, recipes, and it gives you some sample images about what the colors will look like once you apply this preset to the camera. I found one of those myself, and I liked the sample images, so I applied it myself in camera, and it looks exactly like that, and I really loved the results. And after that, you don't need to take it to an editing program like Lightroom anymore. That is the end result. You just transfer that picture, if you want, with Bluetooth to your phone and then upload it to social media, and that's it, you're done. The workflow is amazing because it completely gets rid of editing, and I really can't emphasize enough how much I like that feature. The second reason why I really like this camera was about its quirks. It can shoot up to 30 frames per second, and that might suggest that it's made for fast-paced action, but that's far from the truth, because over the past week of using it, I realized that it's actually made for a pretty slow workflow. The shutter speed wheel is very stiff and doesn't move easily. You also have a dial at the back to control the shutter speed, but it only lets you move 2/3 of a stop up or down from the shutter speed set by the top dial. Changing the ISO is sometimes confusing because it's controlled by the same ring as the shutter speed, and it's a 3-step process. You have to pull the ring upwards, rotate it to your favorite ISO and push it down again. The same story continues with the aperture. Even though it has a dedicated aperture ring at the front, it's very difficult to change the aperture without looking at it because the ring is so close to the camera body and it's very difficult to rotate. All of these things might sound pretty annoying, and they are if you're trying to get anything done fast, but that's not really what this camera is made for. In everyday life, using it to document your trips for landscape or street photography, to shoot portraits in a slow-paced environment, or to create abstract and artsy images, these quirks which make this camera slow also make you enjoy the process more. And also, if you give this camera to someone else who knows how to use cameras generally, it's pretty hard for them to figure out how to use it. And that makes you feel special, like you have a more personal connection with this camera, because not just anyone can get it in their hands and start shooting with it. The third reason has to do with the fixed 35mm equivalent focal length. I've said it before on the channel that I really love my zoom lenses because of their versatility. However, 35mm is actually one of my favorite focal lengths, but I barely ever use it because I have the ability to zoom in and out to change composition. With this camera, I didn't have it. If I wasn't satisfied with the composition, I had to move physically, I had to move myself to go closer to a subject or to go further away, and that forced me to get a little bit out of my comfort zone and to be also more creative. Because creativity doesn't come after having infinite options, it comes more from having limited options, because they force you to change something yourself about like the way you see composition, or just physically move somewhere. It forces you to do something to get your vision into the photo. Having this fixed 35mm focal length also forced me to get a lot more background into my photos than I usually would. And at the end of the day, it's also important to mention that if you only use one focal length throughout your work, it will make it look more consistent and more uniform. The fourth reason why I'm really not so happy that I have to give it back is the size and looks. I already mentioned in the beginning that I really like the way this camera looks because it has this retro style, but that's not all. Also, being so small means that it's easy to carry around like this. You just hang it on your shoulder, and it's not really all that much on your way because it doesn't weigh much, it's lightweight. Sometimes with my camera I find it difficult to bring it everywhere with me because it's so heavy. Like I have the zoom lens that goes this far, and the camera body is also much bigger than this. This has a flat design, whereas the R6 Mark II, for example, has the grip at the front. It's just not as convenient to have that camera with you as it is with the Fujifilm X100V. And when you don't have a camera with you, you can be sure that you're gonna miss the shot. And the fifth reason has to do with some unusual feature that I didn't expect in a camera like this. For example, it has a built-in 4-stop ND filter. Like my Canon camera doesn't have that, and it's much bigger than this. That makes it much easier to shoot in bright daylight and at low shutter speed if you want some blur in your images. And the other one is that it also has a built-in flash at the front, which works pretty well if you want to take pictures, I think portraits mainly, in the dark. All of these things that I've mentioned have made shooting with this camera over the past week an absolute pleasure. But in the end, what counts is the image quality, like how much do you like the photos that it takes, because that's what it's for. And I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised in that direction. I love the images coming out of the 26 megapixel sensor of this camera, especially with the film simulations on top. It was just, I have no words for it. Having said that, I also want to mention that this is not a workhorse kind of a camera. For example, I found the autofocus quite annoying and not fast enough. The joystick at the back is also tiny and it doesn't move the autofocus point very fast. It can only do 4K up to 30 frames per second, and it has no IVIS. My Canon R6 Mark II has all of those down, and with that camera it's close to impossible to miss a shot. Whereas the X100V is made for a more laid-back type of photography, where you have the time to get the settings right before you press the shutter button. So there you have it, guys. These were my first impressions of this camera. After having tried it for a week, I have to say that I will definitely take a closer look at the Fujifilm ecosystem and see what other cameras they have to offer. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss any videos like this in the future. I hope I managed to maybe inspire you to also get out there and shoot some photos. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.